as you're thinking about the accounting of your business, that we're not putting ourselves in a situation where as entrepreneurs, you're getting sloppy there. So Etchen was teeing us up on some of the tactical stuff that we should be thinking about when we're getting our companies founded. But again, there are some companies that we can turn to in town, like Biggs Coffer, when you get to the point where you need a pro forma build for your business, a business model, a 3 to 5 year business model. Those guys generally will work it out, so they'll exchange some equity in exchange for doing that. We could use a couple more firms like that, I think, as well. So, I mean, let's just keep thinking about it as a kind of community entrepreneur. Keep in our various discussions. Keep thinking about alignment of the companies we have involved, right? So that they have a better chance of getting through those subsequent levels of funding, those stages of funding. Because if you get out of whack on any of that stuff, it's going to make it more difficult for you to go out and seek capital, because they're going to get this stuff from you and it's not going to look right, and you're going to stall out and they're going to move on to something else. So this is all in the spirit, I think, of trying to get companies as ready as we can get them with as few barriers as possible between you and your first stage of funding or your first stage of success. So I think that probably captures, I think, where we've kind of started these sessions with. And then, of course, we knew it would all come to this point. The other problem is, even if we have alignment on the other side of the line, I think we all are at least suggesting pretty strongly today that we have poor private investment reaction from this community in general. Again, I think we have to play our role on the front end of that to get these companies in a situation where we're proud to put it in front of people and ready to put it in front of people. But on the other hand, we don't really have a willing community right now. If we really summed it up, with all the money we have in Colorado Springs, we don't have willing money on a consistent basis right now coming from one single investor in town across a breadth of companies. So we don't have any benefactors in town saying, I'm going to put in 200 grand a year, 20 grand a crack in 10 startups, and I'm going to roll with them and try to get the grass fire started. You don't have one person doing that right now. We hope that changes, right? And I think with high altitude investors and some of the other things that are happening, we have to encourage them to start to look at the entrepreneurial community more consistently. Hopefully the economics of our community are going to get a little bit better. There's a lot of money here. So I think where our conversation then turned was, well, so if we can't depend on that capital as a source for our small businesses, if you're raising $50,000 to $500,000, and we don't have the sources here to do it on a consistent basis, then I think where the conversation turned is, let's go out and get it somewhere else. And we've got a situation this week, one of the little companies I'm involved in is going to take money from an Indian entity, and that entity can do some more investing in Colorado Springs, right? And we all have different relationships with venture capital funds and private equity folks and other large private investors that are out there, rich uncles. But we do, right? And I mean, that's part of creating all this network density for ourselves as entrepreneurs, is so that we can all kind of go, okay, well, who do we know? So this led us to this conversation of sources of funding, seed funding outside of Colorado Springs per se. And Pete and Chris have been charged with just kind of at least get the conversation started for us so that we can start to cut into that as an issue. And I guess I'll say one more thing. Part of what we want to do with SpringsStartup, in addition to, I think, agnostically promoting events throughout Colorado Springs and just letting everybody know what's going on, I think there's a real need to identify kind of the dirty dozen of Colorado Springs, the top 12 hot young companies that we can talk about on a consistent basis, and that we can talk to the press about on a consistent basis, and then we can also as a group start to go, hey, are those 10, 12 companies, are they in alignment? So that, in the spirit of kind of everybody trying to get these companies kind of cleared up, ready to go, are they in alignment? So as we start to think about these outside sources, and I'm going to Boston next week, for instance, and I'll be with a bunch of different venture capital funds. I'd love to be able to go, hey, by the way, in Colorado Springs, here's the dirty dozen, and I'll keep you posted on the people that are popping up out of here when they're ready to take venture money. just so we can get a few of those pipelines to Salt Lake and Boston and the Valley and some of those places going. So it was kind of under that thought process that we started to go down this path. So now the next step is, who are these? Who is out there? And who can we show off our dirty dozen and others to? So with that, yeah, right. So Pete and Chris, I'll let you guys kind of take the conversation from there. That's okay.
Cool. I had a couple of thoughts I could kick us off with.
Yeah.
And just let me throw a little bit of a framework to start out of what some things I've learned here. Thinking about this, as Chris and I talked, and Jan fired off an email, but okay, how does one get funded? I boiled it down to three things. Get lucky, get good, get proven. What do I mean by that? Little background first. I'm a finance guy. That's where I've spent my career and done everything I do. At some point along the way, I switched from investment management to CFO type work. On the investment management side, I was a partner in a small venture capital fund here in Dallas, and have some decent experience. But when I started Qbillion, a web application for investment analysis, what I learned is, hey, since the 2000 time frame, the world has changed pretty darn dramatically. Some of that is really awesome because the cost of doing a really successful startup has come down dramatically. And that's kind of weighted in software, but there's some other things out there as well. But between open source, between cloud computing and lean startup methodologies, I think Chris and I were talking the other day, and it used to be that it takes $5 million to get a company going and do something, and that's kind of a nut. And then in the mid-2000s, 500,000 became the new 5 million, and today 50,000 is the new 500,000. I mean, that's good news. And there's some pretty powerful things, more leverageable than software, but it's just out there. And so I kind of gave myself an education in, hey, how has the world changed in fundraising and in startups? And I don't know it all by any means, but I think I've learned some important things along the way. So back to get lucky, get good, get proven. Get lucky, what I mean by that is really the entrepreneurial and business sense of the term is find someone who your vision just resonates and they say, yeah, that's got to happen. I'm a venture capitalist or a very wealthy angel or your rich uncle, and that's just got to happen, and I'm in with you. And you know, you're lucky, you're fortunate, that happens out there. I gave you kind of an example of it happens a lot less in Colorado Springs and other areas. It's, you know, there's a pathway that we can help and the community can make a difference and make it so that this is a place where serendipity in entrepreneurship and technology entrepreneurship happens better, but that's a little bit of a tough road in Colorado Springs. Get good, what I mean by that is that if you have one or two co-founders who have made some venture capitalist somewhere, you know, a 10x return on their money once or twice before, it's going to be easy to get funding. We don't have a lot of people in Colorado Springs either, though, who have these really solid, if not home runs, then at least doubles, and have a reputation where, hey, the next time you're starting a company, there's a handful of VCs who want in. So get proven. That's where I go back to lean startup methodologies, which to me, as I say sometimes, I think lean startup is the most powerful idea and framework and thing to have in entrepreneurship. You know, kind of since the demise of indentured servitude. It's just a set of methodologies that apply scientific method. And the fact is, about 80% of startup dollars are wasted. And lean startup methodology gives you a very light, nimble way of attacking that. You know, that's probably a discussion to go deep on some other time. But one of the very powerful...
We will go deep on that. I think that is that's one that has to be one of the upcoming discussions, because I think we're talking about it too much without really helping everybody. So if you want to just get smart, go out and buy Eric Reese's book, Lean Startup. And again, it's a punch list for not wasting your cash, right? Because we've all done startups. And you should read that book and understand at least he's not Jesus, he's a 31-year-old dude. And but not to get down on the less than 30-somethings. But he did hit on something. He did hit on something.
It's a current time.
It is.
Perspective.
It really is.
It's not these old principles, but he actually used it in the development of virtual world games and just kind of models out of those principles. So I think everybody should read the book. I'm going to start last chapter.
It's good. He has some really powerful things, and it's, you know, it just dramatically lightens the business model so you can do stuff. And a lot of that is proving it out in this very light fashion of, don't hire lots of salespeople, don't spend all kinds of money developing the wrong product, take it as light as you can. One example that Eric Ries puts out there was spending a lot of money on development on something, and it turns out no one came. Well, okay, next time around, instead of spending $1 million on development first, they put up a web landing page that said, hey, this is what we're going to do. If you're interested, get on our sign-up list, give us your email. And right away, they could iterate on that, change their messaging, change their direction, and all of a sudden, thousands of people, that's how Dropbox got going, right? They kind of had some different things, and all of a sudden, they had a few 100,000 sign-ups. If we can do this, we want, okay, now we know we can spend some money effectively, and we have something that the world wants, so we can raise some venture capital around it. Lots of ways of doing that. Sometimes it's a handful of LOIs in a different model. Sometimes it's that landing page. Other times it's customer interviews to where all of these things add up. There's a book, and it's if tried a very accurate phrase, nail it before you scale it. Don't spend this 80% on trying to scale something only to find out we don't have a scalable business. We don't have a problem that's deep enough. We don't have a solution that resonates for the problem. We don't have a path to customers in which we can acquire customers cheaper than the value they bring back into the company, cheaper than the dollars they bring back into the company. And so those three, problem, solution, and path, get something that on a very small light basis works. And my view, Jim, is that when we do that, we probably have the resources, whether it's your uncle who's only medium rich or here in this room community, we probably have the resources if we apply that to get companies to that point where they really have nailed it. A little bit, if less dramatic, a little bit like Facebook, when maybe we can go into a new university and in about 3 minutes, half the university is on Facebook and signed up. I think actually it's 3 days, but there's a dramatic example of someone who didn't spend very much and had a hugely scalable, proven business model and were able to write their own terms, their own technical funding. And so, get lucky, get good co-founders, that's what you need some elements of that to increase it. The companies that have shown we built something, the customers love it, it solves a deep problem, we know how to go out and acquire those customers, and now we're going to scale up and start spending a lot more on the development side of it. We've only spent a little on development so far. We're going to scale up marketing, we're going to scale up the advertising efforts, campaign, whatever it takes to scale your business model. And from there, I think we can bring in lots of capital, and that's where, like Brad Bell says, do something that's real and solid, and the capital is going to find you. So that's my framework for how we get venture capital and build funding and build great successes in Colorado Springs.
Okay, I love that. Any thoughts?
That's what we're doing.
Yeah. But I have to reinforce how valuable that book is. I can't say enough about it because I honestly know from my personal experience and mistakes that entrepreneurs do have a tendency to get married to their idea and they want to see it to fruition until it's like this big, red carpet event. And so a lot of times they end up going bankrupt because they are so married, so close to home versus business. So when you start with something that perspective, business, make sure you're not putting too much money in things that you
I can say my feedback is it's a little too unrealistic. The simplistic framework of if you build it, they will come. We've done that. We've done that in our lives. We've built some really great businesses that you have no one in front of. And have no one in front of. The people who do put them in front of don't have the vision to see that they're running their businesses. And so they don't have.
Or as we were saying last time, if they decide to invest, they rip the shirt off your back, and they leave you bloody on the floor for 20K, and it's like, okay, now go build your business. Now that we just beat the hell out of you.
But so I guess I hear it at least once a week. Somebody will tell me, "Oh, there's you know, I can't fund my business, or my business failed because I couldn't find funding here, or whatever. And I think it's not dependent on location anymore. And yeah, the local investor culture is different. What we need to do is show a couple of huge successes, right? And approach from, you know, a different direction. Show those huge successes so we can say, ah, look, this is, you know, the kind of things that we can turn out here. But anybody who gives up because they say they can't find the funding, I think your business wasn't fundable. Or you didn't try hard enough, because
I don't think anyone's giving up.
Or you don't know who to talk to, or you don't know who to talk to.
Everybody's dragging their asses slowly through with whatever they can get in the meantime until they get funded. So my experience has been that, you know, I talk with people, and frankly, I haven't nailed Key Billion yet. I haven't shown that we can get people in, and, you know, I put out this many things in the world, and that many people come back to the site, and here's where we're away from there. So I'm missing the key element of showing the scale of the business model. And hey, yeah, we've got a cool product, but I haven't shown what's going on yet. I talk to people, you know, Battery Ventures, 406 Ventures, Foundry Group, the general consensus has been, and yeah, I have to have some good infrastructure and know how to do that. The general consensus has been, show us that there's a business model that's really gaining traction with scale over there. And let's talk again. Until then, I have to find someone who my vision resonates with them almost as much as it resonates with myself. And the hurdle is more huge. If you're telling me, hey, even then, Colorado Springs is
I'm not saying that's intention. What I'm saying is the conversation that we need to have is who are those people who want to look at it? That was the
Yeah, I think you give up on our business.
Well, so what I'm saying is step back one step in the process and talk about those people that we should go talk to.
There's a danger though, right? There are people we can call, but you know, if the startup is, to be perfectly honest, right, 98% of the startups that we see around here, I don't want to put in front of so-and-so because they aren't ready and they aren't, you know, mature enough or believable enough that they can get the funding. And
right, but when they are ready, let's assume that the other two conversations that we had previous to this one were the conversations about how do we get a company ready. Now, when they are ready, what's the channel? Who do we go talk to? We go talk to you and you put them in front of them. You go put them in front of them? Who do we go talk to? There's really no one to talk to in this town.
One of the things we're working on is a list of VCs, angels, and crowdsourced things that are friendly to Colorado, right?
We have to do our part.
Right? And we've actually had two VCs came here within the past year and sat down with people in town and said, what deal should I look at? Right? A lot of these VCs that used to be doing it, and just like Pete said, the model has totally changed, right? And I can give you hard examples of this, and it sounds great, but it's never that great. But I've taken $1 million in VC, and I've taken up to $34 million in VC in 3 rounds. And that kind of model doesn't really exist anymore, right? Things have totally changed. It used to be, if you need more than $2.5 million, you got to go to VC. If it's less than $2.5 million, you need angel or super angel. Now, there are a ton of VCs that are looking for specifically 500 to $1 million, right? Even Foundry Group, who wasn't doing this, is now doling out $750K and $1 million as a starter, right? And then we'll help with future rounds at 5 or 10 or whatever it is. So there's a bunch of those, but there were 2 VCs that came to town in the past year and said, what should we look at, right? And we put a couple of things in front of them, and they said, you know, yes, you know, that's interesting, not ready, interesting, not our space, that kind of thing, right? So we have to be much more targeted about how prepared they are, et cetera. And there's a couple of good books out there, right, on how to prep for this stuff. Brad's book, Brad Feld's book, Venture Deals is good. There's another one, Raising Venture Capital for the Serious Entrepreneur, talks about how to do your valuation, et cetera. I think the things we have to really figure out are how to teach a company, how to know how much money to raise. Right? People always are taking wild guesses, and you know, the lean startup approach is good for the minimum viable product kind of. You know, it sets a boundary for you. I need enough money to develop this thing, which I can get out there and sell and prove it, and then raising the next round. you know, for more, yeah, it becomes pretty damn easy, right? Because you have a story, you have a model, you have the metrics to show, you know, what your sell-through is, how much it costs to market, all that is different. And there's a million different ways to finance, right? So, you know, you can self-finance, you can bootstrap, you can do friends and family, you can do angels, super angels, venture capital, SBA loans, and I'm trying to think of other ones that are easy, the crowdfunding stuff. At this point, everybody that I talk to, depending on their model, there's the easy entry points, right? But crowdfunding is low overhead and not really, doesn't cost you much out of your pocket, right? If you have a product, something that you can sell, you should be on Kickstarter. You should give it a shot because for 200 bucks, something like that, you set up your whole application, it helps you clarify the vision of your product, and you can go raise 500 grand on there. Several companies have raised north of $1 million. I had a friend who raised money for 2 documentary films on Kickstarter, and he raised 250 grand. And
there's India Go-Go too.
Okay.
Which is more for profit companies.
Okay.
Kickstarter does a lot of.
It was. I think it's changing.
Yeah. Those are the two that are actually in the news right now. The ones that are Kickstarter.
And another one that everybody should put yourself on is Angel List. The reason is that that's a direct to angel advertising platform, right? And if you have people that are interested, you can, it's like a social media for small investment, right? But there are companies on there that I think I saw 2.7 million, something like that, from just the connections on Angel List, right? And you create a company profile and put your whole ad out there, and then there's pay platforms, right? Invirtual is a local one. There's also AngelSoft. There's also Go Big Network. There's probably like 20 of those.
Small cap.
Yeah. So there's a ton of them, right? And those are ones where you're paying 200, 300 bucks to create a profile, you know, basically a due diligence package to put it out there, and people can look at it. Now, the value of that is that it helps you get that package together, which you're going to need to talk to anyone anyway. Right? So those are the easy things. Beyond that, you know, if you can fund it yourself, or there's a lot of bad money, right? Friends and family money is one thing that everybody goes after, right? And I've been in companies where we took up to about 200 grand in friends and family money, right? So you can get some serious funding out of that, right? The problem with that is there's a lot of personal guilt and a lot of attachment and a lot of and so I mean there's you really have to know what you're getting into, right? Because you could disassociate yourself from your own family if you're not, you know.
That may be good.
And venture capital is at this point in my life, right? I try to never take venture capital because there's so much overhead with it, right? Venture capital is really good for connections, really good for mentorship, but that money comes with high costs, right? They really want controlling interest.
25 to 40% of your value.
In round one, and they want to be over 50 in round two, right? And so there's a pretty high cost there. So you really have to be, you know, kind of like you said, if there's a VC that you're friendly with and you are and you have a great relationship with, and you're getting a ton out of what they have, then it can make sense. But
I wouldn't be as negative, I guess.
It depends.
And I just wouldn't be as negative on that front. I think you do have to be ready. I think it is a more mature stage company, ironically, that goes to a venture capital fund. You can't go in with your shoes untied, right? Because they'll eat you alive. But if you're ready to go, and with the right, if you're going through the process the right way, you can get enough venture capital funds through a process looking at what you're doing, you can even that out somewhat. But again, I think you have to be further along. I do think we have to identify a host of VCs for our businesses. I mean, like it or not, a lot of businesses are going to get big enough that they're going to need venture money, and we have to be able to attach them to some venture funds. I don't care if they're in Albuquerque, Salt Lake City, Boston, you know, right? I want to be able to say, hey, you know what, that's one of those companies that's ready to go do it. I think where I probably agree with you a little more is, I think too many brand new startups naively think venture capital money is what's going to fund their business. And,
well, to more to your point, it's going to cost them a couple $100,000 to get it. At least, right? They've got to put up their model, they've got to put their legal in place, they've got to have the right team, they've got to, you know, get some traction, they've got to do all this stuff before they're ready to present an VC. So what we need, though, is we need to plug that gap, that couple $100 gap, that maybe $1 million gap. Most of my clients, I mean, they're not raising money.
Looks like
Maybe some of them are raising changes, and some are in the double days, and those are the ones that can go directly to VC. You know, most of the time, it's $1 million max. That's an angel round. That's a friends and
I was talking to guys at Howland yesterday. I said, how low do you go? They go 25 grand. And I said, what's 25 grand? I said, you know, 18 to 20-year-olds. Right? So for the really young people, we'll go as low as $25,000. So, right. So I guess here's what I said.
I was going to say,
Rather than trying to guess at what point in time we're going to need these people, my belief is you need to look at the whole thing. So if we can't get our private investors kicked over here in the short run, then let's identify sources of capital outside of our city, if we have to, or through new people we haven't met yet, right? And I also think we should be thinking about the venture capital side of that. And we, you know, again, every venture capital, if I'm founder group, I'm shooting fish in a barrel because I'm the only guy in town. So if you have the best idea in Colorado, I get to, it's going to be mine because there's nobody else to compete with. And we had guys like Verge who were talking about coming up here, right? And so to me, it's like, I don't know that it's a zero-sum game. I think we need 10 to 15 venture capital funds that we can say, hey, when that company's ready to go and they need a couple $1 million bucks. And we've had a few of those, I can tell you. I mean, I know a couple that have been sold as of late that could have done better if they would have had some venture money to take them a little further down the path. We've got to be able to plug those people in. In talking to people, we have enough contacts that my guess is that list could be a couple dozen venture capital funds that we have as a group personal contacts with. And then I think we've got to do a little packaging on behalf of Colorado Springs to start to, you know, that goes back to the notion of the dirty dozen, to start to actually correspond with these people once a quarter, just say, hey, just FYI, you know, we're not selling it, we're just, again, this is what Colorado Springs is doing, and here's what's happened with these companies, right? It doesn't take a lot of effort for them to start to go, shit, what's going on in Colorado Springs? They haven't asked me for anything yet, but this is like the 4th thing I've got this year from. What's going on?
just so they can see the landscape.
Soften them
what's
up a little bit.
happening, but not before you have.
It sounds like we're identifying where people are at first rather than jumping ahead to VC in larger amounts.
Yeah.
That's important as well, plus having a list of those. But it sounds like we need to identify where everyone's at and then at that point advance them rather than saying everyone's at this level to begin with.
Yeah.
That's what's probably the biggest failure of this now, is to take people from the beginning into the level where they will need the capital. So I'm suggesting that that might be where the focus, or the mid-focus, and then the VC level. All right, because it's the larger money at that point.
Yeah.
But they have to be prepared to get to that point, and I think that's what we need to do.
There's
It
a lot
depends
more,
on each and every person where they're at.
there's more private investors out there too outside of Colorado
The
Springs.
education, the training, the follow-on, the more completeness, putting the complete package together for the presentation, and making sure that it actually is more complete so it doesn't get turned down or modified in a way that's negative to the business. Or shredded itself, just to be shredded.
We never promised to do that. We just need to get in touch with all the companies that are worth putting that polish on. To get it prepared. But even if we do that, I mean, I have half a dozen companies right now that I've already done that for. And then we go through my personal network and
Right, so let me give you an example.
and we're done.
But let me give you an example. So Gelasi needed $1.5 million, which unfortunately didn't get. But through that process, I identified a lot of angels outside of Colorado Springs that I think would be much more inclined to invest in technology or an IT idea than unfortunately a food service concept. So it's not just the Highlands and Tudors and the Polarises in Boston. It's there's some rich people there that I came across that I didn't take money from them, but I can tell you that those people should be on a list for us.
You know what they're looking for?
yeah, I do know what some of these people are looking for down there. And in some cases, this just didn't seem to suit them, but man, there's any number of things we had in Colorado Springs that could potentially suit these folks. So,
Who's ready first? I think going back to something you said, I think we in Colorado Springs need to raise the bar in a pretty substantial way. And by raising the bar in a reverse way, I mean lowering it. But we need to hold ourselves to a standard. I would suggest that the substantial majority of companies that are true technology scalable startups, brick and mortar and biotech, things like that, the substantial majority of the companies that we can get going should be able to get to the point of being ready for venture capital for between $50,000 and $100,000. Sure.
There are companies here. There are companies here. There's a culture, though, of keeping everything kind of private, right? Jan, there's a company that I help out that Jan knows of that has raised $20 million in equity, $30 million in debt, and currently has a round out for $46 million of preferred and common stock, and will get funded. It will be fully subscribed. Where are they getting the investors from? Super angels, for the most part, and they're coming out of Dallas and Houston and Salt Lake. Those areas are very friendly to us. They love Colorado, right? They see Colorado as the environmental, aggressive, sort of hippie, sort of new stuff, but it's different than Texas and Utah is, and stuff does get funded, but you never hear about it, right? We don't do much publicity, so I think that's the fault of some of us that are trying to do, big startup things, trying to develop the dirty dozen, do a little bit of our own advertising, show the wins. And that's going to happen.
Well, because you pull the money out of the rich that are already here.
I think the way, I'll tell you how you do it. I think
whoever they may be.
you can get it, okay, but not when they're the only ones being asked. You need a little bit of that competitiveness just to change the mindset of these people. You mentioned a whale. I don't know who that might be in the greater scheme. Is it a male a whale that actually does anything?
Yeah, but they're very private. It's only on a personal basis. It's not. There's absolutely a culture here of this massive due diligence and treating it like a
venture capital.
Yeah, even worse, treating it like you're buying GE stock, right? They expect dividends, they expect coupons, they expect convertible debt, they expect all kinds of this esoteric stuff. Yeah, and Brad Feld is a proponent of the. And so am I, right, is just what you're saying, kind of altruistic thing. I am going to lose some money on some of my angel investments. That is okay, you're making an investment in the culture, right, and changing things and opening doors and all that stuff. I think one of the problems is that we're
so far from that.
Yeah, well,
no, seriously, I wrote a blog on that very topic. I did really put that out, saying, who are your local businesses going to get money from? Private equity? No. Banks? No. Venture capital? No. Who's going to do it, right? And the reaction was, from the entrepreneurs, was like, yeah. From anybody who read that, who was a normal investor, they were like, well, I just want to let you know, it's all about ROI to me. I mean, it was like a reiteration to say, that's not why I invest.
So look at these
guys. So don't come and look at me that way, because I want to return on my investment, and that's the way I look at it. So, and they're really proud to almost throw that out on a consistent basis. I mean, that has become part of the culture of the city.
Right, but those guys that are doing that, the people that are in this is where I'll get shit from somebody. Pardon my language, I curse a lot. Those guys are older.
Yeah.
They are risk adverse.
Yeah.
They are not the culture of, it's not Silicon Valley, right? But when we have a startup here that, sells off for $200 million, right? And 10 of the principals in that company walk away with $2 to $5 million. Those are totally different. There's a different mindset, different culture, a different tolerance to risk. Those guys are definitely going to be willing to toss $25K at something without blinking. Right? And what we have to do, and other people who are trying to corral this entrepreneurial culture, etc., we have to find a couple of companies and make sure they have that edge. Right? And once it happens, we're going to continue,
It starts to kind of come back to this group when I don't know that this group really understands, nor should they probably at this point, understand where individual companies or ideas are in terms of the funding process themselves. But it probably will start to become healthier as we keep going here, to start, you know, if we do say, hey, we just subjectively speaking, who's the dirty dozen that we can throw out and attach to a list? Who are they? And where are they? Right now, I bet you 11 out of 12 are in the funding stage, right, looking for money, and maybe one isn't. And you know, then we can start to back up a little bit into some of those people up at Kissing Camels.
I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah, but it's a good example, right?
Example.
Since it was the first example, you might use you first.
But also,
Most of them are from here.
yeah.
That doesn't matter though.
That's right. In fact, that's even better possibly.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think that necessarily
Because they have
matters.
bought into the mentality.
We have to figure, because it's, what you said also is exactly what happens within the VC community. I mean, they immediately call each other, they do crowdsourcing, even if they go in as a single source.
They have their own Facebook.
60 to 80,000 to 80 million we got in the company that I was in, even if they went single source, they still talk to all the others. Hey, you want to be in on this? And then they were in on a later round. But getting back to, how do we know successes? I mean,
Well,
I know there's a lot of things that go on that maybe that we don't even know about, but it's not just us. But what about all the other companies that have been successful? We have to figure out how to find out about them and then be able to make the list so that we can put it in the media. Obviously, it would be great if it happens when it happens. But if we're going to talk to private folks or VCs, it would be nice if we could list 1, 10, 20 companies that have done something in the last 5 years.
Or others, you know. But
I mean, I think that's where we need to start to give some credibility to the Springs area. So then we don't look like a six hole, you know?
We're working on it. Yeah. I mean, and he's working on it.
because I got stuff to add to it.
Yeah, send us the list. Actually, at the last meeting, I said send
I do.
Otherwise, we are what we
suggest for the list.
There's an executive group that maybe.
I know it's coming to
Okay, yeah, no, absolutely right. And there's going to be, the way I view it is that we need to have the debt pool, or the dirty dozen debt pool, which is companies that didn't make it, and intentionally we want to show those and why they failed. Right, because there's something to be learned there, and if you don't admit the fact that things die, you're all smoke and mirrors, right? And then who are the graduates, or who are the people who achieved escape velocity, and just come back and
It's fine showing lots of failures. One thing I think they got missed when Brad, well, both Brads talked about yell about your successes, but I think one thing they got missed when Brad Feld talking about his 25,000 a month is he was real good at laying out the statistics of what it takes to invest, right? What did he see? He's like 35 or 40 investments, of which 10 of them didn't die yet, and 3 or 4 of them, he made 5 times his overall investment out of those. People at high altitude invest, VCs get it because they're in the business, but private investors have to understand it's not an ROI, everyone is a home run, or God, why would I do this? It's not it's a mutual fund, it's not picking a stock. Yeah. So they have to understand any one investment is probably going to tank. But I just love that he just threw all his numbers out. And people I think it just went right back.
Well, it did, because when you look at, if you look at consistency of investment, I challenge anybody. We don't have a benefactor in town who's playing $25K a month.
Right.
Period. Right. So, and in fact, when I tried to recommend to a few folks that there be some education along that front, I heard some people say, "Well, that's just investing one-on-one," and it was kind of almost like you don't need to teach us how to privately invest, right? So there's a little bit of even a pride factor. You know, I know how to invest privately. I don't need a day of lessons on that, and so. Again, I think you're going to have to lead by example a little bit. You're going to have to get some other funding in here. I think we have to come at it from both ways. We only have a few minutes left. I'd love to at least just talk for a second about, and I kind of look at you here. So there's a lot of conversation about contacts, and in your particular case, as an example of yours or mine, we may or may not be willing to say, yeah, there's an individual there that I would publicly suggest as an investor. But I think we should, where possible, try to do that. And even if he wants to remain anonymous as John Doe 3, and they've got to go back through you before they talk to your set of people that you identify as, hey, there's probably $1 million, $2 million of investment here, 50 grand of crack, you're going to have to go back through me because I value the contact. I appreciate that. I think we should do our best to try to inventory that amongst ourselves. Because I know if I sat down and said, okay, who are all the VCs that I would be comfortable talking to? Who are all the private investors I'd be willing to talk to? I mean, I can honestly say I think I'd have probably a couple dozen names to a list like that. And if everybody has that set of contacts, I mean, all of a sudden we have a list that's a little more powerful. So if you've got an idea and you want to go get 50 grand, you can kind of start to weigh in there. And okay, I want to talk to one of your guys because it's an oil and gas idea. Look, if he's got a great idea, it's not just that he hasn't proven the idea yet. It means that he doesn't know where to go for fun. And again, just like when they say, who's the lawyer in town I can call? I just think we have to have a broader solution there as entrepreneurs to say, well, look, I mean, here's who we're talking to every month. Here's the VCs we're sending stuff out to. And we do have a list of 50 large private investors. Maybe 25 of them, the name's actually on a piece of paper, and the other 25 where we got to go back through these guys and talk to them. But I just think we have to start to, somehow we have to start to wrap our heads around that. We're all going to just be doing the same thing, which is trying to almost cold call our way with these small companies to the private investment community.
Two questions. One, who we send contacts to that'll maintain the list and we can do some marketing activities? Who's going to do that?
I totally volunteer to do that. So I've already got 30 dozen lists from 3 people and myself already, right? The suggestions, and so.
On the company side, student company and VC side.
Yeah, and I've already started a VC list, and I've got mine and one other person who sent it to me, right? And there's a lot of stuff on there. At this point, we're trying to list everything, right? And it's not who your personal contacts are. It's just what's everything that's potentially available to Colorado Springs.
I need a list of grant writers, okay, and people I go to for grants. For instance.
And we should,
because that's another reason.
Put them all on the list at this point, right? And then we just start marketing to those people, and we'll figure out who are the ones that are receptive.
And so my second question, I'm just wondering, does the Springs area, do we understand that raising venture capital in particular is not it's just not a numbers game. Some things you carpet bomb the world and cover it, and okay, certain proportion are going to rise to the top. This is the laser like we talked about. And so when we have the list, I just want to say let's not 10 companies every month go and contact everyone on the list. Because most of them are not going to be a fit for it. Looking for certain things, certain sizes, certain phases. And
I don't think that will happen personally.
Okay.
I mean, if it ever becomes a problem, that almost would be a good thing for us to have to deal with a little bit if we've got companies that are reaching out that aggressively, you know what I mean? But I think the other side of that has to be a certain sobriety that just says, we have companies that need to be ready. You guys need to be ready with your companies before you go do this.
You need to be ready. You need to know who your shit is. You need to go to Foundry and hey, this is how we fit into 2 of your 5 themes, and that's why we're awesome.
Yes. Right. And I just think there's going to be a little more caution probably from our end that we do that right. Otherwise, we all know, and we should pass it on to everybody else, you're just wasting your time. If you
burning bridges.
Yeah, exactly. You don't get 2 shots.
Because it's Chicken Little. You keep saying, oh, it's like. I mean, you go to a VC if you plan on being a corporation.
I don't agree with that.
But there should be venues
I don't know what
for
that
private
means.
owners, there
Well,
should be venues for small organizations.
If you're
looking for
corporations, so let's don't delimit that.
Well, in that, because you already know you're giving up half or more of your time, probably way more.
Fine, but again, I mean, the problem isn't so much, we just don't have enough companies out here to scale.
No, we don't have scale.
We had a few during the dot-com bust, right, that almost popped and really popped, right? And we, since then, he's right. We bring chip. We're still trying to find the next chip manufacturer in town. It's not going to happen. So to me, it's like we haven't had enough wins, and we've had, frankly, some companies that have been very high profile and haven't made it. So I think we got to be good on our side of the game, and then I do think we need a list. I think we should try to identify that list and start to soften those people up a little bit. before you want to be the invited guest. So let's start to soften up with information on what's here.
And we identify the scale of where we're at too.
I'd love to see 30 dozen.
So we can match it more closely rather than, mismatch. Because that makes us look bad too, doesn't it?
Steve, any thoughts?
I had a question for you, which is you talked about the benefactors not participating. The benefactors,
Consistently.
do they exist in their dormant, or do they not exist?
They exist. Well, look, how do I categorize that? They have over 20 million bucks in net worth. There's lots of people like that.
And they are making investments.
No, I don't know that. What's that?
They are making investments, right? But it's not shotgun. It's not altruistic. It's not. They don't have an understanding of that. Of what Brad talks about the return percentages, right? What they're like. Wow, I'm really interested in that. I did that in the past life. I know a ton about that. I'll give you 25K, right? But here's all the terms, like in 6 pages, right? And so it's not. It's very. It's like making an investment.
I don't think that older generation, with a few exceptions, I mean, I just don't think they're positioned to invest today.
So here's they made 10 times.
I definitely think they're dormant or they haven't. This just isn't.
They don't have money.
This just isn't on their radar screen right now. I don't think they're willing to right now. I think we have to assume that we've got to find some other alternatives, get better on the other side ourselves, get some wins, and then I think it's going to be a generational thing. I think the next investors are going to be the people the day they're building these businesses. I don't think they're necessarily the people that have cash now. It's just my opinion.
I've seen 2 kinds of companies that fund lately, 2 buckets that have been funded, and it's usually been an ROI position where the people have really put up a good case of how they're going to get their return, and the other's been a passion position. I've seen a lot of people with money lately throw money at things that they were passionate about, a sick kid, technology, a medicine. So I have to say to some of you people that have things, think of who you're going to cure, who you're going to help, who you're going to make money for, your tool, if it's a tool or a product. And go look at those people with money, because I'll tell you right now, a lot of people with a lot of money are willing to invest in things they believe in. People they believe and trust
In
in.
the solar industry,
When I know the people that have made investments,
Right.
and I try to lay on it, you can go freedom or Springs.
they like it because it's
They end up really fighting back against the issue of anything other than an ROI. So maybe you're right. Maybe the people that are kicking $750 grand a year in a draft exhibit need to be positioned while you're doing a little bit differently. Still haven't said all that. Maybe it's I'll make a personal statement. I have no faith in our investment community in Colorado Springs.
I agree with you 100%. I would not look any. I would not look money in the
I can either hope we can kind of decode that through the years, and but after a while you just kind of go, let's find other ways. Like this little company that we've got this week that's going to come from an Indian family. I'm telling you, there's another 150 grand from these people minimally for another 2 to 3 companies in Colorado Springs. We can get them to follow up and jump into a lean startup. And God, that's 4 companies we funded now without having to try to decode all this, because it's still a small population, a small group of individuals, and I just don't want to count on them anymore. It's not so much it's not a personal thing. I just don't want to count on it anymore. And I think if you do, you're going to get leveraged. So I'd rather create a bigger universe while we're getting smarter with our entrepreneurs. And I think the next generation of people that are making their money, I know a lot of people say it. Hey, when I make money, I want to invest in these other companies because they had to live through this, right?
I'm going to say, I think here in the entrepreneurial community, we need to, by example, the successes, teach people how to make technology. The ROI, I kind of think that as a financial investment. One of them is very safe, this, that, and the other. But going back to the Brad film, I think a technology investment, I know it has hair on it, I know there's problems, but there's some incredible passion, some incredible talent, and I know I'm going to lose most of them, but some of them, per the VC type net, are going to make so much that we can play that.
You don't intentionally make a bad investment, but you have to go into it knowing they're not all going to be winners.
Yeah, and we're not asking for all of them out there. All of them should have a high return associated with them. It's just that most of them may not work out. That technology mindset is great. We've got to bring those in from the outside and show successes and teach the community what it means to the investment in a portfolio sense.
You have a wider base of your triangle, you don't get squeezed as much either.
Right.
You have a kind of negotiability.
All right, we got to wrap up, guys. Thanks for showing up. I think next time we'll try to put a little more. We'll try to throw a little framework out in front of everybody next time, maybe, and start to talk a little bit more about lean startup and those